Joining us at the Big Bid Theory, as always, Bill Culhane alongside Jim Ward. During this production, Jim has an update on government procurement as it pertains to the legalization of marijuana. We'll visit with David Boyer. David has been at ground zero on the push to have marijuana legalized in Maine. All of that and more. Jim, we're always looking to spruce up the podcast. Folks will want to stay tuned for the debut of the Big Bid Theory Band at the end of the podcast. How about that, my friend?
Well, hello, Bill. How are you all doing this evening?
Doing very well, Jim, and always trying to take the podcast to new levels. You know, the launch of the TBBT Band tonight, I know, is going to have our audience excited.
It is. There's some exciting stuff going on. What we've done is, in honor of ACL, the ACL Festival being this weekend and all here in Austin, and us being the live music capital of the world and all, you know, we decided to might as well have us a house band, if you will. So it's going to be the world premiere of the Big Bid Theory Band tonight. Bill, I must say I'm pretty excited about this.
And I'm excited as well. So again, folks will want to stick around for that. And incidentally, Jim, what do you know about Ronda Rousey being on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon this week?
Actually, Bill, I knew about that. It was kind of a last minute gig because she I hear that she's a week into her training camp for the UFC 193, which she headlines. So I actually have no idea what's going on whenever she goes into camp. I think she's pretty secluded.
Because you have inside sources, you have to keep us posted. Now,
inside sources. Is that what they're called? Is that what the kids are calling it these days?
Something like that. Now, I mentioned, and before we visit with David Boyer in a moment, what's the sneak peek on crazybids?
Yeah, we had such a great response on just the spirited debates from last podcast on the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, kind of sticking with that theme, and with David's interview coming up, David Boyer, I have some specific crazy bid that I want to go over that just is one of those that has to do with the legalization of marijuana.
So with no further ado, here's our sit-down with David Boyer.
As Jim just mentioned, later in the show, he's going to have an update on his continuing research on the topic of how marijuana legalization is impacting the world of government procurement. In our never-ending goal of adding other voices, opinions, ideas on the topics we cover, we're excited to bring in a special guest. Helping to spearhead the efforts in Maine, David Boyer is the campaign manager for the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol and joins us now. David, thanks for visiting the Big Bid Theory. It's 85 degrees in Austin today. Have you folks in Maine had to break out the parkas yet?
We did have a big old rainstorm on Tuesday, had some flash flooding, and it's almost getting to freezing at night some nights, so winter is coming, that's for sure.
A little different than here in the Lone Star State. We'll get to the topic at hand, David. Appreciate you joining us from the road. First off, what are the goals of campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol?
Well, we realized that marijuana prohibition hasn't worked, just as alcohol prohibition didn't work. We changed that law, and we think we should repeal marijuana prohibition. It's done nothing to make our community safer or stop the flow of marijuana. So instead, we think marijuana should be legal for adults 21 years of age and older, and we should put marijuana behind the counter where you have to show ID, take it out of the black market, and legitimize it, and tax it, regulate it, and make it legal. We don't think adults should be punished for using a substance that's less addictive than alcohol, less toxic than alcohol. So we should give those people that alternative, a safer alternative, if that's what they choose.
As recent as, 2 weeks ago, watching the GOP debate, clearly opinions are divided on this subject. As a matter of fact, right here on our staff at TBBT, different thoughts, different ideas about legalization of marijuana. Where do the citizens of Maine stand, the general feel right now? What's the vibe that you've got?
I think Mainers are ready for this. I think it's been a long time coming in Maine. Maine has decriminalized marijuana since, I believe, 1979. We've had medical marijuana on the books since 1999. So I think the majority of people here realize what the government's told us about marijuana is not true, that the exaggerated harms that they've told us about marijuana are not true, and that what we're doing right now is just not working. But it's still going to be close. I'd say polling-wise, it's probably around 50-50, but we're going to have a robust campaign. We'll be on TV. We'll be bringing young people out to vote. That's why we waited till the presidential year to put it on the ballot. So I think they'll pass it next year.
David Boyer, that's the voice of David, who is the campaign director for the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, joining us here on the Big Bid Theory. You kind of touched upon it, David. We've all heard some of the cons. Gateway drug theory, easy availability of marijuana could lead to new consumers. Legalization of marijuana could, give children the idea that drug use is acceptable. So, the list of cons, what would you say to those opposed to legalization?
Well, as far as, being a gateway substance, gateway drug, the White House commissioned a study that disproved that. And, just common sense. Let's look at some of the numbers. Half this country's tried marijuana, yet only very few, 1%, use hard drugs. If it really was a gateway drug, then there'd be far more people using heroin and cocaine, but there aren't. The real gateway is the guy you get it from, because the guy who sells you marijuana maybe has other illegal drugs. And by making marijuana legal, putting it behind the counter, we're stemming the interaction with the black market for otherwise law-abiding citizens. We don't get offered any other substances at the liquor store, and that's how it should be with marijuana. And we think by regulating it, we'd actually have less kids have access to it. When I was in high school, it was, and I'm sure it's still like that it's easier to get marijuana on campus than alcohol because marijuana is not regulated. So we think, given what's going on in Colorado, the sky hasn't fallen in Colorado. The state's bringing millions of dollars that they were otherwise flushing down the toilet, that this is something that makes sense, and that the majority of Mainers and Americans are now supporting this, taxing and regulating marijuana like alcohol.
You mentioned a moment ago, David, there in Maine, medical marijuana is one of about 20 states where it's legalized. I think last count there are, 5 states where marijuana has been legalized for recreational use. So in summary, what must happen for recreational use to pass in Maine?
Well, logistically, the first hurdle is that we have to qualify for the ballot. So right now we're in the signature collecting phase. We have about half of what we need, and we've got a couple more months to do it. And so that's on track. Once we qualify for the ballot, then it will be on next year's November's ballot. And what we need to make sure that it passes is we need to have a strong campaign that will be on TV, on radio, and at the doors, and getting the message out that this is a safer substance than alcohol, that law enforcement has bigger fish to fry than marijuana consumers. Here in Maine, two of the largest cities has made marijuana legal in private. Portland and South Portland in 2013 and 2014 locally passed those initiatives. So we've been working in the state for a while to build support, and next year will be the culmination of everything.
I need to point this out. Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol isn't just an initiative in Maine. I know there are other groups, other states involved in this as well. David, how can our listeners contact you and or the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol?
Yeah, we're working in Maine, Massachusetts, Arizona, Nevada, some work in California towards legalization efforts. So they can go to regulatemaine.org if they're interested in our specific initiative, or We're kind of supported more broadly by the Marijuana Policy Project, who was responsible for Colorado and Alaska's legalization initiatives. So going to mpp.org and signing up for the email list there and seeing what's going on in your state. Some states are different places. For example, Florida's trying hard to pass medical marijuana. It's a different makeup there. But all these reforms at all these different levels are very important.
David Boyer joining us. We do appreciate you carving some time out of your busy schedule visiting with us. Please keep us up to date on what's going on in Maine.
All right. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Okay. Well, again, that's David Boyer joining us. Again, we'll touch base with David down the road. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on what's going on with the legalization of marijuana.
So again, connect with David on Twitter at Regulate Maine. Also on Facebook, look for Regulate Marijuana in Maine. Jim, there was David, a perfect lead-in to Crazy Bids right here at TBBT, and you and I even talked about it in the production meeting. We have a range of positions on this topic within our staff. Heck, you and I don't necessarily share the same opinions on every aspect of this topic. We heard David point out, and you already know, of course, you've written about it, we've podcasted about it. In related government procurement and marijuana legalization, it isn't isolated to one county, one state, one region.
No, it's wild. I mean, here's some quick bullet point thoughts from the interview with David. First off, I was really, really fascinated to find that it was that close of a debate or of a vote that they're looking at. Just to kind of go back over this one last time. So there is a petition. If you live in Maine, if you are a Mainer, first off, you get to be called a Mainer, which is really cool. But just know that those petitions are out there, and there's also petitions that are against, that are vote no. But my point is, make yourself heard if you're in Maine, because he brought up some really, really interesting points. I don't want to pick any of it apart because in the grand scheme of things, I think he's spot on. I do have issues with certain aspects.
I told you, Jim, again, in the production meeting, and I'll give credit to Lori because, of course, she did some advanced scout on this. I didn't realize that campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol isn't isolated to Maine. There are other campaigns.
Yeah, Arizona, I know it's huge in Arizona. It seemed like there were the majority of those were like 11 states that have votes coming up in 2016. And one thing on that, Bill, I had kind of looked at those particular states, and those are all due to the presidential election. If you look at which states they are, and also as far as how far they're pushing it, it was just pretty telltale. I think David was very articulate in making his case, and I think he made some fine points.
Jim, it's that time of the day, that time of the show. Crazy Bids. What do you have?
Crazy Bids. Welcome to this edition of Crazy Bids that you can win. So what I decided to do, first off, from the last episode's Crazy Bid, we had such an enormous response to everything on Facebook in particular. There was something. There was one message I wanted to just read. It was from Tracy Ward.
Any relation?
I was going to say, on whatever I hold holy, I'm still waiting on that thing, Bill, but besides the point, I give you my word, I'm not related to this person.
Okay.
Not a plant. This person wrote, my granddaughter, aged 7 years old, had over 20,000 seizures in her life, and is just 3 days. And after just 3 days on cannabis oil, her seizures stopped. So why are we feeding prisoners in there for marijuana? So first off, the poor thing. I mean, 20,000 seizures. Oh my God, that breaks my heart. So that was really neat. There were a lot of shiny, happy stories, and I get that. I do. So in this bid, I just found something interesting. So here's my thoughts, Bill. I think the majority of people that I know can really grasp the medical benefits of it and it's used for that. I think most everyone can agree that, for example, the packaging of edibles like candy targeting children, that is so awful. That oh my gosh, that just gives the entire industry a black eye. But the other thing that I would always be worried about is we're talking about a plant here, so there's going to be variations. So where's it coming from? Who are the people, So I looked up an actual bid. I literally picked one at random, and it's for the city of San Diego, and it's a notice of application for basically a medical marijuana consumer cooperative, or an MMCC. Bill, the MMCCs.
Correct. Yeah.
And so the applicant was this cat named Rick. Geez, I'm sorry, Rick, if you do hear this. I'm going to butcher this name. Rick Ingebretson. I don't know. Maybe it's misspelled. Otherwise, Rick, I apologize. So I was just curious, okay, what kind of person, what kind of company is going to be doing this grow house? I did, a whole Woodward and Bernstein thing and all this, and then I just Googled him. And I found something that really was eye-opening, an article in the San Diego Tribune by one Jeff McDonald on April 29, 2013. It's airport waste lawsuit was costly, and it talks about this lawsuit between a company owned by the man whose name I just butchered and will not butcher again.
Call him Rick.
Exactly, Rick. Good old Rick. He owns a company called West Tech Contracting of Escondido. Okay, it's by Miramar. They had won an $18.8 million bid at this airport to get rid of their toxic waste. And so anyway, this lawsuit goes back and forth on this company that Rick owns or was associated with, found a cheaper way to dispose of this toxic waste in Yuma, Arizona, although it was not accredited to the contract's original specifications. So that's where the rubber met the road, so to speak. And, I mean, I'm not saying the guy's good, bad, or whatever. I mean, he actually won the settlement. I just thought it was, naively, I thought the people that would be the ones providing in California medical marijuana right now, I think I had green sunglasses on. Bill, is that right? Would that be an appropriate way to state it? I mean, that was very eye-opening. I expected it to be like some organic farmer who, has a heart of gold. And Rick, no offense, again, it just seemed a strange dichotomy to have a toxic waste disposal company becoming a marijuana dispensary. That's this edition's crazy bid. I don't mean, Bill's brought this up before, we don't mean to pick one side or another. It's kind of like don't shoot the messenger. We're just passing on information. We're just vessels, Bill. You know what I mean?
That's right. And at the risk of being redundant, I mentioned it last time, and I think you agree. The charter for our podcast, again, is to stimulate dialogue, to present facts with opinions mixed in clearly. I'm full disclosure in this case. As far as the legalization of marijuana goes, your research, what I've heard, what Lori and Stan have provided, listening to David Boyer, I still have too many unanswered questions. And then you bring up the crazy bid that you just detailed a moment ago, Jim, and for me to go to the pro side, I still need questions to be answered. And I know one of the things you're going to do, and here's a foreshadowing of podcast information to come up in the future, you're going to continue to research and look at this.
Yeah, because there are people like Tracy Ward, whose granddaughter has had over 20,000 seizures
Mm-hmm.
20. I've never had a seizure. Have you?
No.
Okay. It seems pretty crazy. And so 20,000. 20. Man, that's.
Yeah, that's horrible.
So I'm being my favorite recent president, William Jefferson Clinton here. I see all sides.
Great work as always. On the next
Thank
TBBT,
you.
on the next show, we'll have a guest who will come on, and this gentleman is going to talk about the nuts and bolts on how you can position your company to pursue and, of course, more importantly, win government business. Jim will be back with a new crazy bid that, like this topic, is sure to educate, provoke thought, and entertain, is what we hope as well.
Crazy.
Ray, crazy bid. # crazy bids. Jim, what is our takeaway from this episode?
I think it's very important that we acknowledge. I don't want to be grandiose here and say that this is podcast history or anything. I mean, it is, but I don't want to be grandiose. So, but I can't think of another podcast that has their own studio band. So
Zero. I can give you the number.
So I'm really excited. I know we don't have a lot of people in here in the studio, but they are very, very excited to hear what noise is going to come from the Big Bid Theory Band, and who knows?
Okay, well, stay tuned, folks. Just a few administrative things to clear up, and then we will have the debut of the TBBT Band. As always, first of all, we appreciate you going to iHeart and elsewhere, of course, to download, share, and follow the podcast. We enjoy hearing back from you. Please continue emailing me at bcolhane@bidprime.com and or Jim Ward at jward@bidprime.com. And shameless plug, don't forget to go to the blog on www.bidprime.com, and you can see Jim's analysis on the legalization of marijuana. Don't forget, you can find the Big Bid Theory on Twitterland at the Big Bid Theory. In addition, you'll find Jim.
Actually,
not two ats, right? I never know how to say that, but at the Big Bid Theory. In addition, you'll find Jim on Twitter as Jim Ward, the number 6. I go by contract_Hunter. That's contract, the little, underline Hunter. For Jim Ward and our stellar staff, many thanks to David Boyer, the campaign manager for the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol in Maine. And, of course, the TBBT Band, making government procurement podcast music the new thing sweeping the nation. Stay tuned in a sec for the full-length version of the anthem. Until next time, go Gunners, Barracudas, Tigers, and Bobcats, and we wish you all the best in growing your business.
What? Ow!
We're having so much fun on the Big